Hello, you are watching Media Soundwave and my name is Heather Cassidy. Today we are joined by these lovely ladies here and the topic is going to be, is my child anxious? So today we have Stacey Turner, who's a children's author with us, and we have Tracey Gladman, who is the creator of the app Worrinots. So let's find out more about what these ladies can do, because today we're going to be answering questions such as, is my child anxious? What can I do to see if my child is anxious and what we can do to help, as well as covering some other topics. So Stacey, please tell us more about your book and how you ended up writing a children's book about anxiety.
Well, I have my own personal experience with childhood anxiety.
Okay.
And then my experience through the early years. I found that I was settling children before I could teach them anything.
And then that takes up so much time then, doesn't it? You've got all these children to help, and if you're spending time with a good percentage of the class, because a lot of children have these worries, don't they? Oh, I'm starting a new school, or they're not playing with me. Why are they not playing with me? They've got so many worries at these age that to us adults, we're like, come on, just get on involved, get on in the day. But to them children, they are worries at that time, and it is about tackling it early. So if you're spending your time relaxing these children, and then you're missing out on valuable teaching time. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, I found that I was nurturing for quite some time before I could even start teaching. And to me, it's very important to meet the social and emotional needs of a child from a very young age. And so it was a lot about settling before the actual teaching could begin. I had to be very creative with the way I then
That's such a good thing though to do though,
teaching.
because by that point though, those children would have known that they can trust you, they would have had a connection with you. And I think for very young children to have a teacher that they can look up to and care about and know that they care back, I think that then opens the door to then allow teaching to happen. So I do think, even though it can take time away from what needs to be done, and more could be done at home if parents know how to deal with it and how to prepare the children, I think the relationship that you then have with those children is very, very important to go forward to help them learn.
Really important, because by that point we'd established that healthy attachment in school, and so there was that trust there. So they enjoyed the environment and they enjoyed being at school rather than feeling threatened by the situation.
So tell me about the book then. How does the book?
So my oldest daughter Molly, who's 7 years old now, I recognised she had anxiety from a really young age. At 5 months old, she was displaying signs of quite extreme separation anxiety. And
well, sometimes you think we might expect too much of our children, because I think all children have signs of anxiety and all children go through it, and you've got to think they've got to start school, they've got to leave parents might be working different shifts, they might have to move to a new home or make new friends, they might have a new brother or sister arriving, or different relationships within the family unit, new parents coming and getting married and things like that. So I do think sometimes we do put a lot of pressure on our children to think how they should be reacting about things.
Perhaps, yes, sometimes, but Molly's symptoms were very extreme.
So they were clearly noticeable that that's what it was.
There was no other person that could offer, that could soothe and settle her. And it did become sort of quite apparent that it was slightly concerning for me. I was trying to settle her into nursery, and she was retreating to the corner, covering her eyes, screaming for dear life. Before I could even get her through the door, she was clutching onto me, digging her nails into me. It was quite extreme, and so the symptoms were definitely there. It wasn't something
That's
I
the
viewed
thing
as,
though, isn't it? Noticing rather than, come on, we need to put you into school, mummy needs to get to work, or daddy needs to get to work, or come on, none of the other children are behaving this way. It's noticing these signs, isn't it? And thinking, hold on, no. This, is not my child acting like my child, and taking note and thinking, okay, what can I do then to help this child?
Yeah, exactly. So then I thought, what am I going to do to help this poor child? And so I just drew on all my experience.
As a teacher and your own experience from being at school.
Personal as a teacher, and also the various study that I've done over the years.
You were
really
in a very
specific
fortunate position then
area.
to be able to help your daughter.
Definitely. I created I'm Going to Nursery to help settle her in, and it was
Can I have a look at your book?
Of course.
Thank
So
you.
it was about her, for helping her to form that healthy attachment and to trust being at nursery rather than feeling threatened by the situation.
So I'm just looking at this book now, and as I flick through the book, it's a colourful book. You can stick and draw pictures in. it's big enough writing that the children can learn to read it. It's very much written like a children's book. So it's not an adult's book, is it, that an adult can then go away and read? It's a book that an adult can read with their child and discuss with them. So what kind of things are covered in the book?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a children's picture book, but it also acts as a guide for parents to help their child, sort of help nurture them through this time of change. Because if the support's not put in place, it can then affect the whole family. It can have a domino effect, because the distress of the child causes distress on their
so upsetting as a parent, though, isn't it, to actually see your child upset, especially if you don't know how to help them.
Yeah.
It's an upsetting thing. I know as a mum that if my little girl's upset, that is the most upsetting thing to me in the world. I don't care what happens to me, but if something's upsetting my child, then we turn into mummy bear, don't we? And we just want to bubble wrap around them and go, come on then, what can we do to help you, or move you away?
There's no better detective than a mother who's extremely concerned about her child. So that's how the book came about. I just thought, I'm going to think creatively. I'm going to draw on everything that I
like the colouring section in here, because obviously art therapy is great for helping children, isn't it, and conveying their feelings and getting it down on paper and learning to express their emotion at an age where they might not have the communication skills to actually sit and talk about things. But we'll come back to that again later. But that looks absolutely fantastic. Tracey, can you tell me what inspired you with your app? Because it's not every day you think, I know, I'm just going to make an app to help children cope with worry. So tell me more about your app.
Right. Well, the actual idea came about from one of our developers. She's a mother of 2 young children, and she was talking to another parent at the school gates, and they were talking about how the worry dolls that they've got out can actually easily be forgotten because you're too busy in the evening. So
and they're so small.
They are quite small.
We've had worry dolls at one point. I could not tell. I've not even seen the worry dolls in years. You've made a very valid point. Where are the worry dolls?
So, well, we've moved on. We've got apps for that now, which is what our developer said. She said, "Well, wouldn't it be great if there was an app for that actually notified you on your mobile phone?" And here is the Worrinots.
They're not going to lose their tablets.
No,
pride of place.
So we asked the creative director to come up with a brand and how it might work, and it wasn't really by chance that he came up with the Worrinots or the characters, because again, as a child he was bullied, so he's got real good childhood experience.
So he put his own experience into it.
And he said this concept would have helped me when I was in school, and the characters, there's 4 characters, and the names of 2 of them haven't come about by chance either, because they're actually methods that child psychologists suggest that children use as coping mechanisms.
Oh, brilliant. So what are the names of your characters?
We've got
Can I have a look at your app?
Certainly. We've got Rip and Stomp, who are the 2 characters that children suggest that are coping mechanisms.
Okay.
And we've also got Shaky and Chomp, who eats the worries, and we've got our little nervous character called Shaky. So it's just, we've got the 4 characters.
And where is this available for download?
It's available on Android, iOS and on Kindle.
Right, so children can get access to this app anywhere, and it's not just the one app, is it? You need
you need to download Whatnot. Parents need to download Whatnot to their phone, which communicates with the app, and they can respond back to their children as if it has come back from the characters.
So it isn't actually something within the app that's talking to the children, it's actually their own parents that are speaking to them about their worries that they have.
Yeah, because what we're essentially trying to do is get children to speak out, because they won't.
Yeah. Is there any guidelines though that pop up for the parents to say, have you thought about mentioning this, or have you thought about discussing that? Because actually some parents don't know what to say in that circumstance.
Yeah, within the app we've actually got worry tips. So there's tips and advice for the child and the parent. So depending on the nature of.
I was going to say, because sometimes an adult might read something and go, actually, I didn't know they were going through this.
Yeah.
But what do I actually say? I want to help my child, but what do I actually do?
And that's why we've put the age-appropriate tips in with coping mechanisms within it as well. So if the child is very young, it's a discussion point with parents, and if it's an older child up to about age 11 or 12, then they've got the ability to read it for themselves and know how to manage and cope.
Fantastic. So we were mentioning before about sitting down and talking, and obviously I mentioned art therapy, which is fantastic because from a very young age children love to paint, don't they? They love the crayons and the chalks, and they love being creative and just getting all the ideas down. And sometimes you'll find that some children will draw their worries more than they will talk about it. But we do need to be making conversations with our children. And how often do you think it is important that we make time to discuss things like this and openly say, look, are you worried about anything? And make it a thing where they can regularly come to you, but also make time for conversations where it's not always about worry, so they don't come to you thinking that's the only way to get attention. But how often should we be making time for just conversation?
Every day.
Yeah, every day.
Every single day.
Every single day.
It's so important to have that uninterrupted time with your children, so that they do feel that they can come to you at times when they feel that they need to.
And we're all busy. I'll go back to my husband this evening and I'll talk about my day because he'll want to know what I've done and I'll want to talk about it.
It's nice having somebody to talk to though,
It
isn't
is.
it? Whether you're a child or whether you're an adult. So it's teaching children these communication skills at a very young age, isn't it?
And you can really see a difference in adults when you can see that they've had adult conversation. As they get older into teenage years, you can see the ones that have actually had that conversation with adults rather than just being pushed into TV or games where it's like a bit of a babysitting service. You can really notice a difference in their maturity and the type of conversation that they're able to engage in.
I also think with very young children, so for example, one of the biggest compliments I've had with the book is, this is great because it bridges the gap of communication between me and my really young child.
I was going to say, because this is kind of like a step for a very young child, isn't it?
But also for a young child in the early years who can also communicate, but it's opening the lines of communication.
It's like the stepping stones, isn't it, and the opening tools.
A lot of people don't realise that if they just change the way that they're sort of asking questions. So, for example, if my girls come home from school and I say to them, oh, how's your day been? They might go, yeah, it's okay. I don't get any information
what's happened today? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Very standard 5-year-old answer there.
What I call emotional led is an alternative solution of just getting extra information out of your young children.
So what kind of tips would you say?
So for example, I might say, I'm encouraging them to speak, and so I might say, oh, I went and did this today and I found this really frustrating and I found myself in a bit of a situation, I wasn't sure what to do. What do you think I should have done, maybe? And
so you're kind of turning it around and asking for their advice to get them to open up.
Yeah, so I'm sort of explaining that I felt frustrated at some point in my day today. I've labelled how I felt because it's important to teach young children that it's okay to feel the way that they're feeling, and that to encourage them to label their feelings.
So these are kind of the stepping stones, and then your app is probably for the children that's a little bit bigger, aren't they? But
That's
still
right,
young children, and then going forward. So it's kind of nice that what are these different stepping stones that we can put in place as parents. But what kind of things would you be suggesting to look out for though? So obviously with your daughter, it was very, very obvious. She was clinging to your legs, she was covering her face, she wasn't wanting to go into the classroom. But what would you say, Tracey, then? Because you've also had a very good background in teaching as well.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest are things to look out for to say, hold on, these are the signs, I need to start thinking, is my child anxious, and what can I then do to help? What would you suggest?
It's the ones that go very quiet.
Very quiet.
Yeah, because from a teaching experience, the ones that go very quiet and don't say anything, you assume they're okay. And it's wrong to assume, and they're the ones that slip under the radar and end up at crisis point. Just because they're not saying anything to us, it doesn't mean they haven't got any worries. Sometimes the reason they don't want to speak out is because they think what they're thinking is silly, what they're thinking they'll get laughed at, so they keep it to themselves.
The children that are very, very clever or very well behaved, you know who those children are in your class.
Yes.
And the children that cause absolute chaos, you know who they are. But
Yes.
sometimes the children that are
ones that
just
drift.
good children
Yeah.
and quiet and keeping themselves to themselves. So these might be children with worries, not because they're either way, but they might just go unnoticed because they are good children and they're just carrying on and they're not either end of the spectrum, really.
That's right.
There's also the physical symptoms as well. You might notice that a child's possibly not eating.
So not eating, quieter.
Not eating, and also toileting within the early years is a massive thing. I have parents that contact me and say, my child is just not going to the toilet at all, and it's causing
So both sides of it, because you think
problems.
sometimes if a child keeps wetting themselves or is wet in the bed at night, or what are they worrying about, but also it can be if they're not going to the toilet as well.
Yeah, and also if you have a child that doesn't want to sleep in their own bedroom because they don't want to be separate from you, or even a very small child who doesn't like putting their head under the water. You know, that's another sort of thing to look
Yeah.
out for. It's not necessarily because they're being difficult, because I think the important thing
That's a
with
scare,
childhood
though, isn't
anxiety,
it, with water? I think water is such a scary topic, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
a completely different section
Yeah.
altogether, isn't it? Because being scared in water is something that you have to build that up, and there's
Yeah.
plenty of adults that are
Yeah.
still scared of water
Yeah.
or too frightened to swim and things.
And you get the obvious things like the outward aggression, but you also
Because
get...
sometimes you think your child's playing up or being
That's
naughty
right.
or not just doing as they're
Yeah.
told.
Or you think they may be copying something they've seen on TV or copying other children's behaviour, but it might just be aggression that they're showing because
Yeah.
they've got things inside that they just don't know how to let out.
I think one of the big things with childhood anxiety is for it not to be misunderstood for naughty behaviour.
Yes.
I think that's so
Because
important.
whenever a child is displaying distressed behaviour, it's really important to kind of look at that behaviour and immediately think to yourself, what's going on underneath the surface there? What is causing
Yeah.
this distressed behaviour?
So what kind of things would you suggest to parents that they've noticed these signs and they want to know, hold on, is my child anxious? How do you then say, right, what is the next step? How would you diagnose it or start moving forward to put things into place to help?
A lot of people don't realise that they can go to their GP, which is a really nice first step if you just really don't know where to go. Because depending on your child's age, there are different services that you can be referred to with your child, and not just for support for the child, but support for you as the parent and the family as well, which is really important because it can, as I said before, have that knock-on effect and cause quite a lot of distress on the whole family, depending on how bad it is.
Say somebody's done that though and they've taken the child to the doctor and they've had a GP, which sometimes can happen, is we've got some amazing medical professions, but in the
Yeah.
instance that they've taken the child to the GP and the GP's just gone, this is normal,
Yeah.
on your way, what would you then suggest, things you can do at home to try and help?
I think speaking with other parents, because we don't want to speak out as parents because we think it's only happening to our child, but it's not until you actually speak with other people you think...
And people don't like labelling their children.
No, they don't. But it's not about labelling them, it's about realising that you're not the only one out there. And a support network of other mums or other parents, you know, dads and carers that are looking after children, it's really important that you realise that other people can help you and it's not just professionals, because they may have actually come across something that you may not have thought
They
about.
might have been going through the same thing
Yeah,
themselves, and sometimes
yeah.
it's good to talk, isn't it? If you can actually go, this has happened today, and somebody else, oh, we had that.
Yeah.
It's sometimes a relief, isn't it, to actually get it out there, but then
Yeah.
also go, hold on, somebody else is going through the same situation, or they know somebody who has, and they know
Yeah.
things that have happened to help. So other things though, what kind of things with regards to, I know there's loads that can help with regards to supplements, vitamins. I think vitamins are absolutely fantastic. I noticed myself, if my daughter, when she was younger, not so much now, because obviously they start eating a more varied diet, don't they, as they get bigger, but I noticed myself that if my daughter hadn't had her vitamin, we would know by the way she was behaving that day, we would know whether she'd had a vitamin or not. So
Yeah.
obviously things like children's vitamins are very important, but with regards to nutrition, is there anything that you think children should be or should not be eating? Or
definitely.
Yeah, it's a massive part of it.
Not just for health, but in regards to
I think
anxiety.
once you've got those concerns, once you've addressed it with the teachers, because they're the first person that you should speak to with
Because
your
they spend
concerns,
so much
because
time with your
they're,
children.
they're the ones that are
Yes.
spending all that time with your child. So it's important to not be afraid of asking your child's teacher. They're only human too, and they're there to have a great relationship with you so they can teach your child as well to the best that they can. So
They do a lot more about nutrition in schools now, though,
They
don't
do,
with
Yeah.
children?
yeah.
So if they feel that there's something to be worried about too, then you can work together. But nutrition plays a massive part, and again, you can be referred to you can be referred on to a children's nutritionist.
So people that deal with nutrition specifically for children and
Yeah.
not just on a general
If you
subject.
feel that you need that extra support to better your child's diet, then the support and help is there definitely.
That's
But
really
it
good
plays
to know.
a major role. Setting your child up with a really good breakfast full of protein for steady blood sugar levels throughout the day is really important.
So I was reading an article and it was linking balance with anxiety in children, and it was saying how that a way of dealing with it, they found that children with anxiety are often more unbalanced, and if you deal with the balance issue and teach children balance, it can actually help with their anxiety. Have you noticed this or heard of anything like this or worked with anybody on anything? anything to do with balance, or maybe yoga or other disciplines that like promote balance?
I've heard that they're introducing it into schools. Whether it actually works or not is yet to be seen, isn't it? You know,
like how many people is it going to do and help before they actually go, this is the facts and this is the figures?
And how are they actually going to fit it into the day? Because we've approached school and asked them to use our app, and they've used it and said children just don't have the time in the day to use it. The curriculum is too tight. So yes, it's a good starting point, having aromatherapy and all of those sorts of things.
I was going to say, because more is being done now in schools, isn't it, in terms of holistic therapies. So there's aromatherapy, reflexology, breathing techniques, massage, meditation, Pilates, yoga.
But how are they going to fit that in the day if they don't have time for the children to just go to use a tablet?
So what more do you think schools should be doing?
Be referred to these sorts of things as well through the NHS, because if your GP says, you know, okay, let's just get that referral in, and then your child can then be assessed by a professional. They can then be put forward for all these amazing things that don't. So then you feel like, you know, your child is getting those extra benefits, rather than feeling maybe they need something more at school. But we know that it's impossible to fit these things in during the day.
I don't know, because if it is just something as simple as they know that they can go and use that app, but that is specifically what that app is for. It's not to be going on any other apps, it's not to be coding, it's not to be looking things up, but they can go and have that worry time if they need it. I think that actually would be a really good thing for schools to introduce, because it's taking the next step with regards to mental health, and I think more needs to be done about mental health in schools and teach children from a very young age. Let's speak about it, let's share our worries, let's help each other to make each other stronger and be happier.
And if children are actually accessing the worry tips as well, if they're understanding what their feelings are, and they can become autonomous over their feelings and be able to manage them and know what they're feeling and know that it's normal and not be frightened of it.
I get really,
that's okay.
I get really excited over this bit.
Because when, you know, children know they get that sicky feeling on a Sunday evening, but they don't know that it's called anxiety. They don't know that it's butterflies.
And it's because they've got school the next day and they're not ready to go back. So in terms of schools making more time for worry time, I know they're doing a lot more to regards to nutrition and exercise. I know they're doing something at my daughter's called like the Daily Mile, and they have to run a mile every day. Which
as well. It's brilliant.
It's great. It's good to get the kids moving and active, and obviously healthy bodies then create healthy minds as well. So it's a big healthy balance, and balance is so important in the lives of everybody, not just children. But what other things, is there anything in particular you think schools could be doing?
I think they need a holistic PSHE education. They need to be not making it specific that, you know, we're just talking about anxiety, we're just talking about worries. They need to embed it into the curriculum, and they need to make it a normal part of the day, normal discourse, that children are actually talking about it and not realising that it's something that we need to be worried about.
So what extra things do you think they should be speaking about, as well as worries, as well as stress? What other things with regards to holistics do you think should be mentioned in the curriculum?
Just the actual discourse that they're using. You know, if we're talking about anxiety, we as adults know what that is, but do children understand?
Do they know what the actual word means
exactly.
and how that feels and what those symptoms are within themselves?
And I think it's important that young children are taught about, you know, so that they're taught to label body parts, but they're not taught to label feelings.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm a big believer in, you know,
having
when
words
I go
for
into
the different
schools
feelings.
or an early years setting, one of the exercises I do with the children is we draw outlines on big paper, and then we stick them up and we decorate them, and then we get the emotional cards out that have got our feelings on, and then we label them, and then we go, where do they go? And they go, oh. And then occasionally there's a couple of children that go, in the tummy. So I'm like, oh, so you're telling me we should put them on the tummy? So it's quite interesting, like the responses
to see that they
the
recognise this
get.
and they're describing it. I think communication is such an important skill to embed in our children, to be able to communicate within each other, to be able to express how they're feeling, to teach them to come to an adult and say, whether it's a teacher or a parent or a carer or somebody that's an adult that they trust, that this is how I'm feeling and this is how I want to explain it. Because sometimes children act out because they're feeling this way and it's all bubbling up and they've got all this rage or all this upset and they just don't know how to express this emotion. So I think communication skills is so vital to it.
Well, as a child, you know, from a baby we learn to communicate. We need food, we need our nappy changed, and we need winding. If we've got pain as a baby, we cry out. We communicate that way. And as they grow up, they learn. Well, they learn all these different emotions. They learn how to smile. They learn the cues from adults and what's going to happen next. But at some point, we actually teach children to suppress that.
Stop crying.
Stop crying.
Stop moaning.
Yeah, it's not okay to be like that. And that needs to change.
We need to be more accepting of how our children are feeling and understanding of why they're feeling like this. Hold on, let me take a step back. Let me question this. My child's not crying for nothing. My child's not worried for nothing. Let me address this. Are they just trying to get attention? And if so, what else can I do to give them attention that isn't addressing things that's making them play up? I think that's taking a step back, isn't it, as a parent sometimes?
Exactly, because when they're babies, if a baby is constantly crying, we actually take that step back and think, they've had the nappy changed, they've had the bottle, they've been winded, what else can it be?
Yeah.
But as they get older, we're not tolerant to that. We think that they should be young adults without that education.
It is. And what more do you think needs to be done in general then regarding to society or maybe laws in the country? What more do you think could be done outside of schools?
I mean, in Australia, they've just launched a multi-million-pound programme where they're going into schools to include the early years, to get in and teach children about mental health and how to nurture that. And this is the bit I get really, really excited about, which I'm sorry to interrupt you before, but could you imagine if we could get into schools and teach children from as young as possible about mental health? They don't need to know the big words, they just need to know that it's okay to feel the way that they're feeling.
We all feel like this. We all have days where it's just,
if
no,
they
we
just
don't feel like
learned
today.
about mental health, emotional regulation, what to do about it, and that it's okay to reach out, that paves the way for a positive step forward. And to me, I think that's life-changing.
So more needs to be done in schools about mental health, just in general, like awareness.
Definitely, and there's so much in the media now to support parents, but a lot of, there's a lot more that could be done to offer support for parents too. More training, more advice, more support.
It's about educating ourselves, isn't it? Because
it is, yeah.
We want to help and we want to do the right thing. And as parents, we're under this pressure where we're always trying to do the right thing, but we don't always know how. Babies aren't born with a guide, but they don't send us with a book of this is what to do, this is what you need to look out for, and if this is happening, this is what you should do. But as you say, opening conversations and talking to other parents.
Yeah.
And it's okay for us to get it wrong. We're human beings just like the children are. We're going to get things wrong, but it is thinking, okay, you know what, I want to try and do something different and I want to try and do these next steps. But in terms of holistics, I think it needs to be done more, like overall it needs to be done more. We need to teach children more about massage and aromatherapy and natural ways to relax ourselves, because I think they're tools for the future, and it's going to stop them getting anxious later in life. Because we were saying just before we started filming about children that are anxious at a young age. If something's not done at this young age, what is going to then happen going forward?
Yeah, it's
most children by the age of 14, if they've got an issue, it's embedded by the age of 14. And waiting beyond that,
it's going to take more to deal with it.
It is.
Yeah.
So it's about that early intervention.
The coping mechanisms from a young age. Even things like basic CBT skills. So obviously if a child's worrying, so I remember speaking to somebody about this idea, and there's different ways of visioning it, and it's about using visualization to help the children. So if they're worrying about something, they can picture something like a train, and it can have all these different compartments. Do you remember when we had the little wooden trains and we'd click all the extra little bits on the back, and you've got these little compartments on the back and all these different colours. You've got a red carriage and a blue and a yellow, and you could put things like, oh, Susie isn't playing with me today, I can put that in the red carriage, and oh, I forgot my book and I'm worried about the teacher shouting, I can put this in the blue carriage, and oh, I wasn't very nice to my brother, mummy might shout, put this in the final carriage. And you can visualise this train bridge, and you can get this train to slowly move up the track, and it starts disappearing into the bridge until you can't see it anymore. So rather than shutting these worries out and shutting these thoughts out, we're actually visualising something that in our head, whether a child or an adult, we can visualise these worries. And this carriage might have one carriage on this train, or it might have 2, 3, 4. We can put it all in, and we're actually processing that in our mind, that it's moving away. And I think things like this needs to be done more with children in schools.
I totally agree, because I think it's all about, equipping children with the
tools for the future.
Absolutely.
to build that resilience so that they can bounce things off, you know, confidently. There's always going to be times where they go, I'm not so sure about that, but that's okay because that's a part of life.
But we
if
need that
quit
because
them
we
early-
need to be able to think, hold on, you know what, I'm stood too close to the edge of this pool. I need
Yes.
to take a step
Yeah.
back.
Yes.
I shouldn't be this close to this. This is dangerous. So
Yeah.
it's very, very healthy to have these feelings, but it's using them at the right time
Yeah.
and using them to our advantage rather than letting them hold us back or letting us worry about, I don't really want to go to school, or I don't want to go to a certain after school club again because there's a child that doesn't let me play.
Yeah.
And it's about moving yourself away from these situations and sometimes going, you know what, I can hold my hands up and go, you know what, I'm not dealing with this. This isn't very nice. I'm going
Yeah.
to talk to an adult. I'm going to talk to a teacher. I'm going to do something about it. And I think we need to teach our children, you know what, if you're not happy about something, do
Change
something
it.
about
Change
it.
it.
Give them the
Don't-
confidence
yeah.
to be able to
Because
make
otherwise
that
they are
change.
going to become unhappy adults
Yeah.
that complain that they're unhappy but don't do something about it. And I'm a firm believer in it's okay to feel unhappy. It's a warning sign of doing something about it. It's when
Yes.
we sit on this unhappiness and keep thinking I'm unhappy and keep saying we're unhappy but don't do anything about it. And I think if we teach the children from a very early age, hold on, that's not right, stand up for what you believe in and go, you know what, this isn't right, I'm not accepting it and I'm going to do something about it and I'm going to do this as well to cope with it myself and how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. I changed my daughter from her first school to another school because she wasn't settling in, and they just weren't.
Change can be very, very
they weren't
important.
equipped
If it's
to
not right,
actually-
do something about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was told by a lot of parents, "Oh, you're very brave," and I thought, "No, I'm not brave. This isn't working for us, and I feel good about this."
And there are
decision."
other options.
And honestly, we have not looked back.
You won't, because if something's not working out, it's not working out for a reason, and it's a very good sign that this isn't right for you, do something else. And you've taught your daughter something very, very important, because if she's not happy, go somewhere where you're going to be happy, and that might teach her something later in life where she works in a job that she's not happy, and hold on, I don't have to stay here. It's not about quitting and not carrying on, because sometimes we teach our children, don't quit too soon. But if you're not happy, change, and then look how she'll flourish and grow and get to where she needs to be, where she's happy. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll speak to you again in the future. If you want to know more about Tracey and Stacey, please go over to our website www.mediasoundwave.co.uk and head over to the Meet the Experts section, where you'll find pictures of the lovely ladies and links to where you'll find their work. Your book's available on Amazon.
It is.
Where else is it available?
You can go through our website, which is www.mytinybook.com.
And you can download your
You can
your app
download
from everywhere.
the app, yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. So as I said, the information is all there. Once you're on the website, if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please do so now, and you will not miss any more future episodes of the show. Thank you both for coming in. Thank you to all the crew and everybody involved in the show. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Media Soundwave.